wanted to begin that we finished our rankings reaction show on Tuesday night with at least a taking the temperature of the latest rumor from the coaching carousel. So, but I'll let you go ahead and get first word on this here. There is just sort of rampant speculation and some reporting that the Chip Kelly era at UCLA will conclude after this season, that it is a matter of when and not if. Some reports say, expected to be fired after the USC game. So, from your analysis and the conversations that you've been having, how do you see the UCLA opening going and sort of what the dominoes would be from that? Because what we had diagnosed as maybe a slow coaching carousel, if all of a sudden UCLA, which is a Big Ten job, right? I mean, all of a sudden UCLA gets added to the mix. Now we're starting to talk about several power conference opportunities there that could set off some dominoes. So before we'll have time, if it happens or when it happens later on, to diagnose the Chip Kelly era. But what about the reports, the rumors, and sort of how you see the UCLA situation?
Well, I think if you're another coach out there, you'd probably jump at the job. But before you jump, you might say, wait, Chip Kelly couldn't win more than this there? Are there reasons for that? Like, is it something that Chip did the wrong way? Like, did he not inspire confidence from the boosters? Did he not engage with the fan base enough? Like, did he not recruit necessarily well enough? They obviously did a great job in the transfer portal, but I think you can argue that the Big Ten is a tougher league than the Pac-12. And in some years, I think it is. Now, top to bottom, I'm not sure, but the top is definitely harder than what you normally get in the Pac-12. So I think you're going to have a little bit of trepidation if you're a coach, if indeed Chip Kelly is fired, who's looking at taking this job. But it's still, coaches always believe in themselves, man. They're always going to say it's a Big Ten job in Los Angeles. But I'm going to want to know how much NIL money we have to play with here, right? Like what is the support like? Because a lot of coaches have a lot of respect for Chip Kelly, man. I think he's a damn good coach. So why didn't it work out? I'd want to deep dive that before I sign.
I think I know why it didn't work out. I mean, the coaches have a ton of respect for Chip Kelly because he's a very good football coach. When Chip Kelly got the UCLA job, was that 2017? Like, it was UCLA and Florida, and there were a lot of Florida fans who were thinking that they could get Chip Kelly and who wanted Chip Kelly. And I remember I wrote a column at the time that Chip Kelly is far more likely to take the UCLA job than the Florida job, because at Florida, they're going to expect him to get a bunch of 5-star recruits every year and have a top 10 recruiting class. And part of the reason Chip Kelly left Oregon for the NFL was because he wasn't really into the recruiting thing. And he's not like a dogged recruiter who's going out there trying to get all the best talent and coming in his scheme. The dude just wants to draw up football plays. And that's why they were, they landed some big recruits, but they were also very much active in the transfer portal. And I don't think they have a strong NIL operation, because I don't think Chip Kelly's spending a whole lot of time trying to raise a lot of money for an NIL operation. In fact, I think he said earlier this week or last week at a press conference, he was kind of moaning about how every single recruit asks about NIL these days. And I just don't know if he's really all that into it. So I think if he does get fired, it is an interesting job in that I don't know where it stands in the new landscape of the Big Ten as it moves. It's not the easiest place to win at, because you don't really have the Rose Bowl from, I don't know the exact distance, but the Rose Bowl is not on campus. It's a long, trek. It is one of those weird kind of situations where in LA, especially, unless you're good, fans really don't care. So you've seen a lot of empty Rose Bowls in recent seasons. And if USC is going well at the same time, UCLA kind of fades. I don't know. I think if you get the right coach in there, you can win, but there is still somewhat of a ceiling you have available to you. But I also think that the NIL operation could be stronger if you get the kind of coach in there who's willing to actually make that a priority.
But have you heard anything about this Dante Moore situation? The NIL deal he was promised may not be there.
Nothing I can really report. I know a lot of schools are interested to see if Dante Moore will hit the market this offseason.
Right. That's I had heard something along those lines. They might lose Dante Moore. That's probably not helping the situation. Now, is that Chip Kelly's fault, or is that their NIL program fault? Because we saw that unfold in Gainesville, where none of that really had to do with Billy Napier. It was more about the collective having issues. I don't know exactly what the deal was. Tom nailed it, though. I mean, the best coaches in our game are the best recruiters. And you can say all you want about Chip Kelly. He is an incredible, innovative mind on the offensive side of the football. Like the things he did tempo-wise, RPO, like he has changed the game that everyone was trying to copy. And when he did it at Oregon, you didn't like Oregon was a place that was the first to the uniforms, the first that made it cool, the first Nike school. Like they had the first, and he was running some of the first tempo stuff. So he had the first of a lot. So it really like had this breakout for Chip Kelly, and good for him because he deserved it and it was great. But then as the field is kind of caught up, like that advantage isn't so significant. And I don't know if, I wouldn't knock him for this. I don't think he's not about the hustle of working the phone, on nonstop, which again, the greatest in our coaches in our game are, Jim Harbaugh, Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, they are hustling almost more than they're coaching. I think Chip Kelly's like, I just want to coach ball. I want to create plays. I want to design offenses that work. Even though some of his offensive philosophy lately has maybe even caught up with him too, where he needs to adapt with the times as well. But I was a little bit surprised though, because it did feel like, speaking of the top, like it felt like they were headed up, and there was like, this was kind of a blip, like first year quarterback, I think this is normal. And it wasn't that long ago. Weren't they in the top 15? They were a one-loss team, 7-1. Like I get they've had a rough patch and like we're already ready to part ways with them. Like I would have expected this season to be, 7-5. Okay. It's like understandable, not ready to part ways. Let's see what next year goes. But, maybe it's because of the move to the Big Ten. It's time to make a clean break. Let's start fresh. That could be it too.
Do you remember him butting heads with the school demanding the $1 million meal table?
Yeah.
He had like the specific set of what he thought UCLA needed to be successful. And UCLA has also had some changeover at athletic director, some changes within the athletic department that could play a role here. If he's demanded, all these different things and then not been able to produce a Pac-12 champion or a team that's playing for a Pac-12 championship, that's probably not helping his case right now.
We also talk about this, like if the boosters and the fans no longer buy into the guy, that's kind of when you have to make a change. Even if as the AD, like, hey, Chip Kelly's probably a pretty good coach, right? Can we really do better given the level of support? The problem is you constantly have to sell the lie to your donors that we can do it, right? If we just get the right guy, if we just get this donation, if we just get this recruit, we can get over the hump, even if a ton of data says you can't, right? Sometimes you just got to kind of cycle through to create some new energy. And like their crowds have been pretty poor this year. Like there's not a lot of support. So I don't know if Chip did the best job, ingratiate himself to the boosters. So we'll see.
I also think too, like they've been better the last couple of years, but they got off to such a slow start under him, like the first 2 or 3 seasons where I think there was a lot of positive momentum as far as the fan base is concerned about getting Chip Kelly because everybody there remembered what he had done at Oregon. But then to get off to like a very average-ish start for 3 seasons, I think that died pretty quickly. Now it's been really hard, even with the success on the field and more wins, to get people to buy in.
And in terms of the move to the Big Ten, if you're not going to fire him, then like announce a contract extension, invest in him, because as it stands right now, if Chip Kelly is fired before December 1st, he's set to receive $8.5 million, which is a lot of money. I know in our Jimbo universe, that doesn't sound like a lot of money, but that is a lot of money. If he is fired after December 1st, before December 2024, that buyout is cut to $4.27 million. So in terms of the timing of this, if they decide to make a move before December 1st, they better have they better have everything locked up, because that's a lot. That's a big change in the buyout. And by the way, the amount drops to 0. So he's on a ticking clock right now in terms of his contract. And so if you are going to ride with Chip Kelly, don't go lame duck in year 1 of the Big Ten. I mean, that's going to hurt him on the recruiting trail. That's going to hurt him in the transfer portal. Interesting times ahead for the Bruins. This was a question from the Cover 3 tailgate. I apologize. It was conversations flying right now. As always, please come and hang out. Please smash that like if you are. UCLA or Michigan State?
For a job?
Yeah.
Oh, UCLA. All day long.
I think
they're
depends what
about
you
coin
want.
flip.
I think they're about the same.
Because I mean, like, think of it. Like, UCLA is second in its little regional footprint to USC, who it shares a conference with. Michigan State is second in its regional footprint in Michigan, who it shares a conference with. You're not really looked at as a program that is going to win the conference as much as you're just trying to have good seasons and get the bowl games, and maybe in a good year now in the expanded playoff flirt with a playoff berth. Yeah, I think it really depends on what you're looking for. Although you could also, I would give UCLA the slightest edge simply because of its location compared to like what you can recruit. Whereas if you're Michigan State, Michigan has good players. It's not a deep recruiting state, and the areas where you are competing, like in Ohio and Chicago and all those spots, you're still surrounded by a bunch of other teams who are hitting that same area. So I give UCLA a slight advantage as far as recruiting footprint.
You know what else you're surrounded by? Do you guys remember the pictures of Lincoln Riley's house, who also happens to coach there? Like, come on, let's be real here. Come on.
That's not for everybody, Daniel.
But if you have that and you live there, you may not care about football. What do people in Michigan have? People in Michigan care about football a lot. Like the commitment and
you definitely have better
passion.
support in the state of Michigan.
Also,
hey, don't you remember when I showed you those pictures of the beautiful Michigan State campus after you were slandering it a couple years ago? It's a pretty place in the fall.
Also, cost of living for your analysts, for your assistants. Like, you can, in Lansing, build out a huge staff of qualified people because they are going to be more willing to take lower paying jobs because it's going to go farther than it will in Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, for some of the analyst and assistant coach money, you're going to have to live, like 45 minutes away from Westwood? Right? I mean, it's
Compton.
Yeah, like it could be really difficult. I would lean Michigan State, but it's fascinating if the job does become open, because I do think they are occupying similar profiles, albeit in very, very different parts of the country.